Well, good evening, everybody, and wanted to welcome you all this evening to this webinar that Reverend Keith Katterheinrich is going to be leading on FM transmission uh, and parking lot worship. Uh, these webinar series were sponsored by the Kentucky Annual Conference reentry team, COVID reentry team, and we've had a lot of really good responses to these, and we certainly do hope that they've been helpful to a number of different churches in Kentucky and throughout Kentucky. My name is John Hatton, and I will be helping in the background throughout the webinar tonight. Um, I wanted to, before I introduce the host, Keith, tonight to you, I wanted to give you a little orientation to Zoom in a webinar format. It's a little different than the Zoom that we use for our everyday meetings. And so I want to invite you to move your cursor on your computer for just a little bit, and it should bring up a, a dark gray bar or a black bar at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a phone, you may need to move your finger on the screen a little bit to get it to work. But at the bottom of the screen, you should see a number of different icons. You should see an icon that looks like a little bubble that you would see in a comic strip, and it has chat underneath of that. And then over a little bit further, you're going to see a raise hand icon. We won't be using the raise hand icon tonight, so you can ignore that one. And then you also should see a little icon with two different dialog bubbles and Q&A underneath of it. And the Q&A box there, if you click on that, that is where you will be able to ask questions about the information that Keith is going to be presenting tonight. So any time along the way that you have a question about the topic of FM transmission or parking lot worship or anything that Keith has said, and you want some clarification or him to go into further detail about that, just click Q&A and type your question in there. I'm going to be monitoring Q&A, and I'll make sure that Keith addresses your question. Now, it may not be immediately when you do ask the question in that Q&A box. I'll watch, and I don't want to interrupt Keith. So when he takes a break or switches topics, then that's when I'll introduce your questions as they've come in, and we'll address them that way. If you go back to the chat feature during the webinar, when Keith brings up different products that he uses, I'm going to post links to the internet for those products. I'll look them up, or Keith has provided me some already, and I'll insert those into the chat. And what you can do while the webinar is running is go on and click on those links. It'll bring it up in your browser, and then you can come back to Zoom. And that way, after everything is over, you don't have to go searching for those products. You can just go right to your browser and find them. So it is my joy and my honor to welcome to you, Reverend Keith Katterheinrich. I have known Keith for a number of years since college. We went to Eastern Kentucky University together, and we were roommates in the dorm there as well. And Keith is a beloved friend. I just can't imagine going through life without him. And it's just the neatest thing that we both received a call to ministry, and we're both pastors. And so I'm really blessed, Keith, to be pastoring with you. So I'm going to shut my video off, and that should turn it over to Keith. You should be able to see him. Keith, by the way, is the senior pastor at South Ashland United Methodist Church, and he also serves on the Board of Ordained Ministry, and I'm sure some other boards as well. I think DCOM as well for Kentucky East District. So he certainly is serves the conference in so many ways, and we're so thankful for you, Keith. So with that, I'm going to shut my video off and hand it over to you.
Well, good evening, everybody. As John has said, I'm the pastor at South Ashland United Methodist Church here in Ashland and on the eastern part of the conference. We've been hosting drive-in church since March 22nd of last year. And in all those weeks of hosting this service, we've learned a lot about how to set up our space and our technology in order to be able to do this kind of service well. So we're now on our second FM transmitter, as our first one has met an untimely death. But we've figured out what works for us. But I also do want to say that that doesn't mean that we are the ultimate authority on drive-in church. So if you figure out something that works better for you, by all means do it. I just offer the information that we have gleaned since March and used in our context, as it might be helpful to you in your context if you're considering drive-in church. And I would say that the critical feature of hosting a drive-in worship service is figuring out how you're going to get your sound to the congregation while they're still in their cars. I've got friends who are doing drive-in church using a PA system and broadcasting music and sermon through a PA system, and I've been told that neighbors come out and sit on their porches and listen. We have chosen to go the route of using a low-powered FM transmitter so that we can broadcast our service, and the participants can, from their cars, tune in on their radios and participate in service that way. So since we're using FM transmitters, that's the means that I know the most about. And so I want to talk a little bit about FM transmitters first and foremost. And this information I'm going to read to you straight from the FCC webpage. It says unlicensed operation on the AM and FM radio broadcast bands is permitted for some extremely low powered devices covered under Part 15 of the FCC rules. On FM frequencies, these devices are limited to an effective service range of approximately 200 feet or 61 meters. So when you start looking at what's legal from your church's perspective without having a public FCC radio license, straight from the FCC website, they're saying approximately 200 feet of broadcast. Now, there are also some technical rules about microvolts of transmission measured based on meters of distance from the transmitter. And it's all very difficult to interpret what that actually means. But what I can tell you is that the transmitter that we have, and I'm gonna throw a picture of it up to share with you guys, and I think John is going to put a link in the John's going to put a link in the chat feature. This is the transmitter that we are using, and I bought it on Amazon. This is the second one. This is the one we're currently using now, and it's able to broadcast at 1/10 of a watt or 1/2 of a watt, depending on whether you set it on low or high. And with the included antenna, because when they start talking about broadcast distances and microvolts of transmission, if you put a better antenna on your transmitter, then you're going to change how much you can transmit, and you can change whether or not you're legal or not legal. But this transmitter set on low with the included antenna, we are right in the range of legal with the FCC. So if I were to set that transmitter on high, I'm broadcasting too much, and that's 1/2 a watt. If you just go to Amazon and search for an FM transmitter, you'll see some that'll broadcast 1/10 of a watt on low and 5 watts on high. When you get into more than a half a watt, um, it's just not the legal range for a transmitter. So just because you can buy it and set it on high doesn't mean it's legal. I know several pastors that have talked about doing drive-in church, and they'll talk about transmitting for up to 2 miles away or transmitting for up to 5 miles away from the church. And what you need to know is if you're doing that, you're breaking the law. Um, what are the chances you might get caught? We don't know. But what I do know is that the fine is $10,000 for your first offense at breaking those FCC rules. So, it's not something that I feel comfortable flaunting the law on. Um, and so, as I said, we're running a tenth of a watt with the supplied antenna, and right at the transmission distance that is required by the FCC for legality. So what we do once we've acquired the transmitter, I wanna talk to you a little bit about the setup. The first thing that you need to know is do not turn on the transmitter without the antenna connected. It'll fry the electronics in it. Now, I told you that our first transmitter met an untimely death. That was not our untimely death, but they all come with warnings. If you're one who doesn't like to read directions, you need to pay attention to that. You have to hook up the antenna before you power up the unit. Otherwise you'll fry the circuitry in it. So make sure you put the antenna on first. Other than that, most every FM transmitter that I've seen like this comes with a headphone jack input. Our new one that we bought also includes RCA inputs on the back. But the key thing is to be able to pull an audio feed and plug it into your transmitter, so that you can transmit everything that you need transmitted sound wise to the parking lot. So we're mixing on our soundboard and pulling an audio cable off of that and plug it into the transmitter. So all the technological work is being done on our soundboard. So a couple important notes from our experience. When you get ready to do this, the first thing you need to do is scan your local radio and figure out where you don't have any public radio stations broadcasting. So, I scanned through 3 or 4 times through the whole band. These transmitters are capable of transmitting on the entire band that you would pick up on a regular FM radio. So I scanned the whole band and I found a spot that was fairly dead in my area. Now, that doesn't mean it would be dead in your area. But we're broadcasting on 95.3 because it was just a space where we didn't have a radio station. So then when you power your transmitter up for the first time, the first thing you're going to do is pick your power setting. So we powered it up and I set it on low. And then because I knew 95.3 was a good area where there was no public radio station, I then set it to 95.3. And now after that, every time we turn it on, it goes back to those prescribed settings. You turn it on, it automatically goes to the same power setting. It automatically goes to your radio station and you're ready to go. Some of the things that I didn't find from reading the directions that we just had to find from experience was first of all, when we were testing our sound, everything in our parking lot sounded really clear. And then on that first Sunday morning, the parking lot filled up with cars and all the metal from the cars caused interference with the radio. And we resolved it by setting our transmitter up on top of a skinny table. Basically, once we elevated the transmitter up to about 5.5 feet high off the ground, it got it just high enough that all the metal in the car engines and whatnot was no longer interfering with the transmission. So I'm going to share my screen again. Here is what we now have our transmitter sitting on. That's my transmitter sitting on that wooden table, which is now sitting on that green box. And as I said, that's probably about 5.5 feet off the ground. And that gets us just high enough that we get a clear signal. The other thing we learned very quickly was don't try to set your transmitter on something metal. because we started by trying to set it on a step ladder, and the metal rung of the step ladder, it just caused all sorts of interference. So setting it on metal was worse than have it sitting down low. So this is just kind of the system that we have now come to. It works for us. But like I said, you've just got to figure out what works for you. But the elevation we found was very important when it came to transmitting, just because of all the cars in the parking lot. So we've figured out how to get that set up to work, and so that's just what we go with every week. Now what we do, and part of it is because of trying to minimize the necessity to move a lot of equipment. Part of it is because when we started doing drive-in church, it was just cold outside, and now once again it's cold outside. So our musicians are inside the church building. We have a praise team that plays one week, and then we have a choir director who leads singing, and our pianist plays one week, and so they alternate. Moving the praise team outside would just require tons of equipment. So we leave them on the stage in our Family Life Center where they can be spread out. And so what we're doing is we're mixing my preaching mic, which is it's a wireless headset mic. We're mixing that into the same soundboard as the praise team or the pianist and the singers, and then broadcasting the whole thing through our FM transmitter. And part of that need to mix everything together is because when the monitor speakers are on our sound system inside, now the musicians inside can hear what's going on outside. The downside of that is that now I'm outside and the musicians are inside, and it's difficult for me to hear what's going on inside. So a couple weeks into the process of having drive-in church, we realized that we're broadcasting on FM. So we just started bringing a radio outside and tuning into our own service in the parking lot. And what that does is when the musicians are singing inside with everything that's going on inside, I can hear them coming through the radio. So I can tell which songs they're singing, when it's about time for me to start, all that sort of thing. I also every Sunday morning type up a complete order of worship, which songs are going where, prayer time, scripture, sermon, the whole works, and distribute it to everyone who's participating, because I like it when everybody knows when they're supposed to go. That way you're not waiting for somebody. No one's saying, hey, we're going to sing now. Everybody just, it's your turn and you go. So I type those up, I distribute them, and everybody can hear what's going on in the service. And then they do their part when it's the appropriate time. So the FM radio outside was a great benefit for keeping us all together, because we don't even have line of sight. So we're relying on hearing what's going on in all the places. Yes, John.
I have a couple questions if it's a good time.
Sure.
So I probably will ask the easier one first here. Would a ground lifter on the plug help with interference? A ground lift of some sort, like
between the soundboard and the transmitter?
It doesn't. It's not clear about what.
Okay.
What they're asking. I tell you what, the person that asked that, if you don't mind, on the transmitter.
Okay.
Ground lift on the transmitter, would that help with the interference?
So we didn't have issues with the interference until we had the cars in the parking lot. We had tested the whole thing with the parking lot empty. which is why we were assuming, that we didn't have that our issue was all the metal kind of blocking the transmission. Um, and then as far as the interference when the transmitter was sitting on something metal, um, because when we moved it off the metal and set it on the wood platform, because it took our interference away, we didn't pursue that any farther. um, so I haven't tried that, and I don't know how you would do that on just a two prong, because our transmitter is just a two prong 110. Now I did read through all of the comments on Amazon when I was buying it, and there were several folks who were saying that the interference might have actually been coming out of the voltage inverter, because it's a 110, but the transmitter requires 12 volt. So you've got a power inverter in the cord that kicks it from 110 over to 12 volt. um, and actually we haven't tried setting it on something metal since we've gotten the new transmitter, so the new one might not have that same problem that the old one did. Um, so that didn't really answer the question, but that's as much information as I can really add to that, I think.
I, d- one of my hobbies is amateur radio, and I may have a suggestion as well for you for folks that are struggling with interference or noise and things like that. Of course, what Keith was saying is um, that there isn't a ground on his FM transmitter, so of course it's not grounded, so it's already ground lifted. And I think exactly what you are talking about, Keith, with the inverter going from 120 volt down to 12. That's your
Mhm.
source of interference and noise. I can almost 95% guarantee it.
Okay.
And though any little AC adapter that we have anywhere around your transmitter is going to be picked up, and it's going to hurt your signal. So what you can do, one, make sure a lot of those AC adapters are as far away from your transmitter as possible. Um, uh, One of the things that you could do is take some aluminum foil and wrap it around your AC adapters as well.
Okay.
However, you can still get some noise down the line. And so if you go online, and I'll put a link in the chat for folks to find them, there's these little toroid beads that you can snap on to cables. And if you put 2 or 3 of those on your AC adapter cable, that can cut out some interference as well, and that could be of help.
Would you put that on the leading side before the transformer, or would you put it on the after the transformer side, between the transformer block and the transmitter?
I would put the toroid beads between the transmitter and the AC adapter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've shared my screen again, and you see what we've done. We've dropped the AC adapter down and strapped it onto the leg of the table. And so what John is saying is, between a lot of people call that a wall wart, between the transformer here, and the transmitter, put those beads on this part of the cord, not this part of the cord.
Yep, that's right. Let's see. The other question was, I have this is from Scott, and he asked, I've used a transmitter far from my audio board, and I'm still searching for a lapel mic with a long enough cord that will not create hum in the transmitted signal. So it looks like I'm trying to
I'm,
figure out what.
I'm guessing he's talking about a wired lapel mic.
Yeah. So I tell you what, Scott, if you go to Q&A and type in, maybe you can help me help you a little bit more. Just clarify maybe for me what you're looking for. But if you're looking for a long wired lapel mic, we can, maybe Keith, you have some ideas that from your experience in AV.
Well, my experience has been when you go to a mic that's powered, that's running phantom power off your board, that increases your possibility of feedback. What we're doing is I'm using a wireless. So we pull a long cable off the soundboard and put the wireless receiver outside. And so I've got the belt pack on my belt, and we put the receiver outside, and we're not getting any interference that way. And so I wonder if your lapel mic, if your wired lapel mic is possibly phantom powered, and it's the same kind of thing where you've got a transformer drop, and that's what's causing your interference. So I guess if you have a wireless available, I would try a wireless just to see if it gets rid of the interference, and if it does, then you'll know what the issue is. If your wireless still has the interference, my experience with audio is that if you start to get shielding wear in your cables, when you're trying to do a wired audio signal, cheap cables are a no-go, because you'll get shielding wear, and then they'll make all sorts of noise. So probably if you didn't have a wireless available, then I would maybe try a better cable. It's a wired lapel mic. Okay. Yeah, Scott, I see your question there. So you didn't have any hum when you had the 6-foot cord, but then you got the hum when you had the 16-foot cord. I would try a new cord. I would try a different cord and make sure it's a good quality one, and see if the problem is the cord itself, since you didn't have the hum with the 6-foot cord. That'd be my recommendation on that. So
I've got the link for the ferrite beads in the chat for everybody.
excellent. All right. Okay, so John, does that cover the questions, and we'll move on a little bit?
Yes, it does. I don't see any other questions. Thanks so much, Keith.
All right. So we've talked about our setup with the FM transmitter outside and the FM radio outside and singers and whatnot inside. So I want to talk a little bit about the parking lot setup. So when we first started, I just decided I was going to preach from the bed of a pickup truck. That's how we were going to handle it. I thought it was easiest. It was quick. We're in Eastern Kentucky. People have pickup trucks. But what we found really quickly is that me standing in the bed of the pickup truck, and the church members parked our parking lot full, and folks said I wasn't elevated enough. They couldn't see me. I'm wondering why they would want to see me, but in any case, so once they started saying that wasn't high enough, we built a box and put that in the bed of the pickup truck, and I preached from a box. Now, if anybody has ever watched me preach, that's like caging an animal, because I'm a roamer, and that made sure that I stood still. But it was what we went with for the time. So here's an image. Now, we did Advent in the parking lot. So what you're seeing there is our Advent wreath. and Bill and Martha are doing our Advent reading for the morning. But off here to the left is me sitting on the side rail of the pickup truck, and there's the box that we had built. So that I was standing up this high, and that pretty much got me elevated enough that the folks in the parking lot said that they could see. Um, so that was our system for quite a long time. Um, the fellow who owns a pickup truck, he would just come in, he was early in on Sunday mornings. We'd pull out the box, we'd pull out the pulpit, we'd set it in the back of his truck, and we would go from there. So that was what we worked with. And due to the nature of our parking lot kind of slopes downhill away from where I was preaching from. You might have also noticed that, well, let me put the picture back up. You might have also noticed that there's a canopy right here. On days that it was raining or the weather was bad, he would just pull the pickup truck under the canopy, and I would preach from inside. It wasn't as convenient that way because the pillars would block my view as well as others' view, and then once we hung our Advent wreath, then it blocked the center section. But on bad weather days, I would preach from underneath that canopy, and so we worked with that for most of last year, while we were doing this. So then around Christmas time, I have a church member who owns a lumber yard, and he approached me and said that he thought we needed to build a stage. We were talking about putting our keyboard and our singers out on the stage for our Christmas Eve service. So we built a stage. It's about 12 by 12. We mounted an awning over the top of it. And we were going to move to the stage for Christmas Eve so that our singers could be present outside as well. As it turns out, I don't know how many of y'all are in the Eastern Kentucky area, but as it turns out, on Christmas Eve, the weather looked like this. So it was pouring the snow. We did not put our musicians outside, but yes, indeed, I did preach from outside on Christmas Eve with the snow coming down, and I was very thankful for the awning over the top. So that's our stage. As you notice, it's a little higher than what the box was in the bed of the truck. We've got steps over on the side. It's very nice. It's very convenient, and we just have the awning screwed down to the stage, so we don't take that down from one week to the next. It just stays put, and that's a permanent fixture out there. Now the rest of the equipment is off to the right, by the door of the building. So it's just me out there. Well, actually with a camera for our YouTube feed. So that's what we moved to, like I said, on Christmas Eve. And so that's the setup that we're using now. And so, I had shelter from the snow and all that important stuff. I will say that personally for me, the weather was worse in the heat of the summer than it is in the cold of the winter. I'm an outdoors kind of guy. I have all sorts of cold weather gear. And so I just put on enough clothes to sit outside during church. There are folks in the congregation that have gotten a little worried about me. They'll ask, are you going to be warm enough this morning, preacher? Are you going to be all right? I'm like, I'm going to be fine. I have plenty of clothes on. We're going to be great. I do have a fan that we set out on the stage in the summertime, because in the summertime it just gets so hot that you got to have some air moving. Yesterday, one of my church members did bring a propane heater, and they set it up on the stage. So the propane heater is just a typical camping heater. In this picture, you can see it right over here in the corner. It's one of those that mounts on top of a 20-pound tank. Now that didn't do me any good while I was preaching, because I was preaching from the front of the stage. However, when I would sit down on the chair while the praise team was singing, it did warm the air a little bit. So I appreciated the gesture. I've been chastised by my district superintendent for needing a heater outside for drive-in church. However, it is it was offered. So I graciously received that. So that's kind of been the evolution of our outdoors setup. Um, I'm friends with Ken Southgate, who is out at South Shore. They've got a back porch on their building that looks out over their parking lot. The building was built for drive-in church. Basically, you just have to assess what your situation is, what your parking is, and just figure out what's going to work the best for you. Also, I will say that it never hurts to ask. You might be looking at your situation at your church and saying, we don't have good parking. We're all on street parking. We can't do this in a parking lot. Um, we had three churches in town that partnered together on Easter Sunday morning, because we were the only Methodist church in town that had an FM transmitter. And so I called the folks at Centenary and the folks at First Church, and I asked them, I said, do you guys want to do Easter Sunday service together? And as Jeff and Pat and I were talking through it, Jeff said, I'm going to call them all and just see if they'll let us use their parking lot. And so we called them all, and they said, sure, come use the parking lot. So we had Easter Sunday morning service at the parking lot at the mall. It was a chore because we had a lot of equipment to move. But I do know that after we did that on Easter Sunday morning, there was another church in town that wanted to have drive-in church that didn't have a good parking lot. And for several months afterwards, the mall let them use their parking lot every Sunday morning to have drive-in church before the mall opened up. So, if you're looking at your situation and thinking, we don't have a nice big parking lot like South Ashland does, you just have to ask. You just have to be afraid, not afraid to ask and say, what are the possibilities? Where else could we do this? I'll also say that when it started to get really cold, I'm a coffee drinker. Anybody who knows me knows that about me. When it started to get really cold, I was out one Sunday morning, and it was like 20 degrees. It was bitter. The sun was shining, and I had a lot of heavy clothes on, but I had my coffee cup, and I was standing up to do the announcements, and I'm holding my coffee cup, and I said, the only problem is I need a cup holder on the pulpit, so I have a place to put my coffee cup while I'm preaching. And because our people have responded so well to drive-in church, and they love the fact that we're doing it, it was the next Sunday that the trustees had mounted a cup holder on the pulpit. So I now have a cup holder on the pulpit, so I have a place to throw my coffee cup while I'm preaching on Sunday morning, which is nice when it's cold outside. All right. Now that we've talked about the setup a little bit, I want to talk about issues with the parking lot. Well, actually, I'm going to stop for just a second and say, if you want to do drive-in church, don't try to do it by yourself. You're going to have a team of folks to come along and help, because there's a lot of work that's got to be done. We're pulling out equipment and a lot of things every week and putting them away at the end. Don't be afraid to ask people to help, because you're going to need help. So when we were getting ready to start, I called our two Boy Scout leaders who are members of the church here. They don't just do scouts here, but they're members here. And I said, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do drive-in church. And what I need from you is I need you to organize the parking lot in such a way that we can get the cars in and we can get them back out. And so they process through, what do we do in the case of an emergency? How can we get an ambulance in if we need an ambulance? How do we get the people out? How do we keep an exit lane open in case somebody needs to get their car out? And so they processed through all of that, and came out the night before our first service, with a diagram of the parking lot, and asked me, where I was going to be preaching from, and how we were going to be set up, and all that sort of thing. And then they figured out how to park the cars and get them in and have enough room to get them back out. So when it came time for church Sunday morning, they came out and they set up barrier rope and made kind of a designated parking area. And then we have anywhere from 2 to 4 people actually work in the parking lot as the cars are coming in, to show people where to park. Now, once they've done it 3 or 4 weeks in a row, they have pretty much figured out where they're going to end up parking. But we still have people to direct the parking so that we get them in such a way that we can get them back out. Um, so you gotta have a plan on how you're going to get them out. Now, when we went from using the pickup truck to preaching on the stage, it changed our exit strategy. So our exit strategy is totally different now, and we have an exit to the left hand side of the church. So we just start dismissing the rows from the left hand side, and they pull out the back exit, and then we dismiss the next row, and we keep the front row of cars far enough back from the stage that when it's your turn to exit, you can pull forward and turn right in front of the stage and go to the exit down on the side. So get help with that, but also make sure that you have a system in place for knowing how you're going to get the cars in and out. Um, I will also say that when the cars are sitting in the parking lot running their radio, and then, if it's a Sunday morning where it's raining, they're going to be running their windshield wipers. If the weather is not bad, that doesn't necessarily mean their cars are going to be on. When it's cold outside, they're running their cars because they're trying to get heat. When it's hot outside, a lot of them are running their cars because they're trying to get air conditioning. But the possibility of a dead battery in a car is definitely there. In 10 months, we have had 3 cars that have needed jump started. The first one that needed jump started was the truck I was preaching out of the back of. So basically, we held up getting all the cars out of the parking lot um, until we got that truck started. So the most recent thing that I have purchased as a part of doing drive-in church is a portable jump starter box. You can go on Amazon and just do a search for jump starter box. They're getting really small because of lithium ion technology. So the one I've got is just weighs a couple pounds. It fits in a bag. We haven't had to use it yet because I just acquired it last week and we didn't have any dead batteries this past week. But we recognized that it's a much quicker process to just go jumpstart the car with a dead battery. When we had the dead battery a couple weeks ago, we literally had to move all the cars around him in order to be able to get a vehicle in to jumpstart him. So now we've just got a jump starter in a bag. And if the next time we have a dead battery, we can just go pop the hood, jumpstart them, get them out of the way, and not hold up everything else. So, like I said, it's only happened 3 times in 10 months. But you do need to have a plan in place to jumpstart cars. People ask me, what are you going to do if someone's battery dies? Well, I keep jumper cables in all of my vehicles. So we just pulled one of my cars over and jump started it. But the jump box is definitely a bonus when it comes to starting the cars. The other thing that we did was we made sure we had good signage, so folks could tell what they needed to do to be able to join us for worship. So this picture that I'm going to share with you right now, those 2 boys are mine. They are part of our Boy Scout troop, and they were part of the team that was parking the cars. But you'll see the sandwich board sign. This says the same thing on both sides. So as folks are driving up to church, it tells them right there what radio station to tune into. We have been doing this long enough that all of our folks, they know. The first couple weeks, we also had the parking lot attendants were carrying around signs in the parking lot that said 95.3, just so folks knew what to tune to. But we still put this sandwich board out every week. So that's just a part of our setup. We get visitors that come piling in on occasion, who've never been with us before, and so that allows them to know what to tune their radio to, in order to be able to tune in for the worship service. All right, the last thing that I want to talk about tonight and then I'll answer any more questions that you guys might have. Are timing issues. We are, in addition to broadcasting on FM radio, we are also broadcasting on our Facebook page, as most folks are. What we have found is, because our musicians are inside, we will have people sit in the parking lot and log into Facebook so that they can see the musicians as they're singing. They'll tune in on the radio because the radio station is a better quality audio signal coming through their car speakers than Facebook coming through their phones. But they'll log in to Facebook just so they can see the singers inside. And what you need to know is that Facebook is behind. Now, I'm sure most of you have already figured that out. We are at about a 12-second delay. So what is coming through the sound system is about 12 seconds behind what's coming through Facebook. Most of my folks that I know that are tuning into Facebook in the parking lot, they'll tell me that they turn the sound down on their phone and they listen on the radio, even though the mouth movement and the words are not synchronized. But they just want to see the singers. What I have learned is that your radio transmission is also a little bit behind live. Now, why that's important is, as I've said, I'm outside and I've got my microphone and I'm listening to the radio. So if I were to be singing with my microphone on, because the radio station is just slightly delayed, what I'm singing would then come through behind what I'm listening to. So don't try to sing into a microphone and rely on your FM transmitter as an effective monitoring system for singers. So like in our situation, if we were to leave our piano player inside and bring our vocalists outside, and they rely on that FM transmitter to sing to the keyboard that's inside, their singing would be behind the actual live playing, which means it would then have a delay effect coming through. So while we have found FM transmission to be a saving grace when we're trying to do drive-in church, it's not useful for that. So that became a reality for us when we first started talking about putting our singers out on the stage for Christmas Eve, but not our instrumentalists. And we were trying to figure out how to get the music from inside to outside so that the singers could hear the music to sing along. And the FM transmitter is not an option for that because of the delay. So we talked about pulling monitor speakers off the sound system and setting them outside, but then when the weather got bad, it became a non-issue. So we just didn't even end up doing that. So those are the main things that I wanted to cover. I'm sure that you guys have questions about doing this that I haven't covered. So I'm willing to take any questions that you've got about anything that I've covered or something that you feel like I haven't covered. And once again, I'm not an expert because I've researched all kinds of stuff and that sort of thing. I'm just sharing with you from my experience. So.
I'm going to invite everybody to click on the Q&A button, and then you can type in any questions you have for Keith. We'll wait here for a minute.
Okay. I see Scott's question. Scott's question is, how are we doing communion? So when that actually opens up two questions, two things that we need to talk about. When we first started doing drive-in church, I was telling everybody, keep your windows closed when you come in the parking lot, lots of things like that. But we were doing offering with a plastic bucket on a stick with a hook on the end of it, so that the offering attendants did not have to approach the window of the car. So I just called it my bucket on a stick. Um, and so they would come around. And I actually got an email from the health department that thanked me for being very vigilant about how we were doing drive-in church, and they requested that we stop doing offering car to car, which I did. And so at that point we didn't do anything where you'd have to go from car to car. Once things started to calm down a little bit and we went back to inside church, what we did was we are doing communion. We've gone back to offering with a bucket on a stick. And so the folks who are collecting the offering hold one end of the stick, the bucket's on the other, and they're still not directly getting close contact with the folks in the car. What we're doing for communion is we're doing the single serves. Now, I'll tell you that we started with single serves that I bought on Amazon. They were the plastic communion cup with the very styrofoamy type wafer on the top. You peel off the first layer and there's the wafer. You peel off the second layer and there's the juice. We have found that those tend to leak. The bread is not fantastic. And so we've had a few problems with it. So what we've gone to is a communion product that's available from Concordia Supply. And it looks like a chalice. I wish I had gotten one out there in our refrigerator. John will probably, as I talk about it, put a link up. It's Concordia Supply, John. So it looks like a chalice, but the bread is in the bottom of the cup and the juice is in the top. One thing it does is it makes it a whole lot easier to get in to the product, because you don't accidentally peel back both layers and you've opened your juice when you're thinking you get to your bread. The other thing is the bread is much better than what comes in those others, and the sidewall is much stiffer, so it's much easier to handle. You're not running the risk of like crushing it while you're trying to open it. Now I know someone's thinking, yeah, how much more expensive is that? We were paying 41 cents on Amazon for the original product. Because I bought 500 at a time, I paid 46 cents a piece. So it was a 5-cent difference. And everybody in my church said it's worth it. Pay the 5 cents. So what we do is we send in two folks. They use the hand sanitizer. They put gloves on. They put mask on, and they carry around the communion cups, and they go just to the driver's side window. The driver is supposed to tell them how many servings they need. And so they receive. We do distribute the communion through the window. We're doing the best that we can to make it as safe as possible. As I said, we're using hand sanitizer and we're using masks and gloves and the whole works. And so they're taking them to the window. And so during our opening worship time, while they're taking up offering, they also distribute the communion supplies. What we did on Christmas Eve was we asked anybody that wanted to participate in communion at home that was going to join us on Christmas Eve on Facebook to send me a message. And so we had our Stephen ministers. We only had like 3 or 4 households that did it, but they went around and after hand sanitizing, they went around and took the appropriate number of communion servings to the households. So, I invite folks after we do the communion liturgy and I pray the epiclesis, then after that I invite folks to open their communion elements and partake together in their cars. Just so you know, if you go to the Concordia Supply website, you have the option of juice or wine, and you also have the option of different types of bread. If you do grape juice and the type of bread that I did, and you order 500 at a time, you can get them at 46 cents. And I think it only took them like 3 or 4 days to get them here. They were quick.
And it even offers gluten-free bread too.
It does.
So
Yeah,
I did put the link in chat for everybody.
there it is. I see it. Thanks, John.
Hmm. Do we have any other questions that you'd like to ask Keith? While we're waiting, I will say, Keith, I think it's awesome to see you up there preaching like John Wesley. not quite on a tombstone, but out of a truck. That's awesome.
I had a friend early on. I got a friend that's on the board of ordained ministry with me that she had tuned in on our Facebook feed, and she sent me a picture that afternoon, side by side, me in the back of the truck and John Wesley preaching up on the box. And yeah, I'm like, anytime anybody wants to compare me to John Wesley, I'll take it.
Good stuff.
I'll also say, when we were down at the mall on Easter, Jeff Bramall, who's the pastor at First Church, he stood up to preach, and he said something about how he's a feedback preacher, and because everyone's sitting in their cars, they're not able. Well, I mean, they could amen in their cars, but they can't. It can't be heard by the preacher. And he said, so if you're feeling like you need to amen this morning, he said, just give a little honk on your car horn. And I tell you, that was all it took. My congregation was not a particularly rowdy congregation when it came to worship. I would get amens on occasion. Now that they're sitting in their cars and they had an invite from Jeff to use their horn, my congregation is they're pretty rowdy now, and there'll be times I'll be preaching, and then all of a sudden I'll just have to stop for a minute because the folks honking their horns, and I don't want to try and preach over their car horns. So yeah.
Well, that's great. All right, I don't think we have any other questions. So Keith, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight, and for the time
Absolutely.
that you took to put this together, and just want to also thank you for just the great ministry that you've been doing despite the pandemic. You got right in it and we're out there preaching in the snow. That was a great picture. So thank you so much, Keith, and we really, really appreciate. Oh, wait, one more. Oh, okay. Patty just said thank you in Q&A. So
You're welcome.
and David Combs says thank you. Will McGinnis says thank you so much, and Jack Steiner and Tammy, they all said thank you. So it's our joy to do this, and so really appreciate it. All righty. Well, I think that'll be it. And just for everybody to know, we are recording this. So Kathy Bruce will be able to get it up on the conference website if you ever need to review it or share it with your church, with some of the folks that are into technology and AV. They'll have this as a resource. So you all have a good evening, and God bless everybody.